but you're seeing a very strong gold price, and I think you've got something like a near perfect storm. You have, unfortunately, several conflicts occurring globally. The big one I think you have is the central bank buying. We've seen China, Turkey, Russia. A lot of the central banks buying gold in quite large quantities, and obviously that's been very supportive. But I think what the market's looking at is probably the fact that we're doing regional exploration. So we have a couple of very exciting targets. We actually just intersected the highest grade gold intercept we've ever had at Drone Hill. So that was 173 grams per tonne.
The gap between the gold price and the valuation of mining stocks is quite big. And this is exactly the right time for contrarian investors to look at exciting companies and exciting stories out there. Today with me is Geoff McNamara of Tesoro Gold. We first met at PDAC 2022 actually, so it's like a little bit more than 2 years ago. We did an interview together about your El Zorro project in Chile. And now Geoff will give us an update. Thank you very much for joining us and your time today.
No, Jan, a pleasure. Great to catch up again, and always, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I find you guys have quite a unique insight into what's happening in the gold market.
That's great. So, Geoff, before we talk more about your great project in Chile, your drilling resource, let's talk more about the macro situation, especially for gold and gold mining companies. I mean, basically everybody in the market this year was expecting like 10 rate cuts from the US central bank, right? That did not happen because inflation is quite sticky. But we still have like high interest rates, but that's usually bad for gold. But gold is still at a very, very high level. We are still above 2.3 thousand US. But mining companies are lagging behind. So what do you think? What's the missing dot until the mining companies can really pick up? And what are your thoughts on the general macroeconomic situation here?
Thanks, Jan. Yeah, look, certainly the junior companies appear to be lagging. I think we are starting to see a bit of a trickle down. We've certainly seen an improvement on the ASX and the TSX with the mid-tiers and the majors in the gold space. And some of that's coming down a little bit. I mean, for example, Tesoro has had a reasonably good run this year. But to your point on a macro level, I think it's a very interesting time for gold. As you mentioned, people were expecting rate cuts. That may happen once or twice towards the end of the year, but you're seeing a very strong gold price, and I think you've got something like a near perfect storm. You have, unfortunately, several conflicts occurring globally. The big one I think you have is the central bank buying. We've seen China, Turkey, Russia. A lot of the central banks buying gold in quite large quantities, and obviously that's been very supportive. So I think it could be a very interesting time. If we do see real rates, if cuts occur in real rates, then I think when that occurs, you potentially see another leg up in gold. And hopefully we see the continuation of the gold equities that trickle down into the earlier stage developers, explorers. I think it's a pretty exciting time for the rest of the year.
Absolutely, I would agree on that. And I think I've just seen a chart like 1 or 2 days ago that the Central Bank of Thailand is actually buying unusual amounts of gold. So it really speaks for gold, in my opinion, even though the Western world, if you would like, right, we're not into gold, yet, but I'm pretty sure that even the fund managers will step in quite soon and really bring gold and mining to another level. But you already mentioned, and I think that's quite interesting, that Tesoro Gold has done quite a run since the beginning of this year. Why was that? I mean, the most of the mining companies, it doesn't matter if they are good or not, they lost again like 30% of their valuation by this year. So what's different about Tesoro?
But I think what the market's looking at is probably the fact that we're doing regional exploration. So we have a couple of very exciting targets. within a kilometre of the existing Tenera deposit, and Drone Hill is one of those. And we actually just intersected the highest grade gold intercept we've ever had at Drone Hill. So that was 173 grams per tonne, so several ounces. And yeah, that drilling's been ongoing for a couple of months. So we'll have some more announcements coming out over the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, with a series of additional holes from not only Drone Hill, but Tenera East, and a couple of the other regional targets. So I think the market's starting to see the potential there for a much bigger system than the existing 1.5 million ounces.
Yeah, that sounds good. And let's talk more about the project and the company later on. But I would really love to slip in like one different kind of question, because I'm always telling my viewers and the investors out there that sure, the company has to have a good grade, a good ground, good location, great jurisdiction, all that kind of stuff, right? But in the end, most of these decisions come really down to the management team, right? Because you are the one, you're the guys doing negotiations. You are really deciding where the drill rig goes in the end of the day. So therefore, we always say, have a look at the management team. And there are two things that I would like to talk about. First of all, does the management team or yourself, do you guys have skin in the game, as they say? So do you own shares? Do you have interest in really bring the company forward? And the second thing, obviously, is tell us more about the background. Why do you think you have the perfect team to really get up Tesoro Gold again?
Thanks, Jan. Yeah, so the myself and Geoff Reeds, the founders, we have 10% of the business. And then the other founder, and this to your point about having boots on the ground and management team, Sergio Rube, who's our country manager. He's a Chilean national. He also has 5% of the business. So yes, we do have significant skin in the game. And originally we funded the company for the first couple of years while it was private. Obviously, Sergio being a Chilean national gives us a competitive edge, we believe, having someone local not only involved in the business, but running the business in country. Excitingly, we've actually recently announced that Mark Connolly will join the board as non-exec chairman, independent non-exec chairman. So Mark is well known, certainly to the Australian market. He's had quite a bit of success in West Africa with Adamus, and then with Papillon. But also, I think Geoff Reeds, the managing director, he's had success on several occasions now with new discoveries. So he identified an intrusive related gold project in Brazil, drilled that out. That was acquired by Kinross, so it's now one of Kinross's operating mines. And he and Sergio and another gentleman, Ruben, have identified the first intrusive related gold system in Chile. So that makes Tesoro quite unique in that there's no other intrusive related gold systems that have been discovered or defined in country. So there's a few ingredients there with the team, not only from a geological perspective, but also from a market perspective where we've had success. And myself, I was previously in private equity, and we actually were involved with a company called Far West Mining, which was a Canadian listed company, and they discovered the Santo Domingo project, a big IOCG copper project. We funded that company for a significant period of time, and then that was acquired by Capstone Copper for in excess of 600 million Canadian dollars. So, all the team has been very active in Chile and had success there as well.
So your management team has a good background. You already had success. You do have skin in the game, as we talked about. You have really high grade intercepts. I mean, that's more than just a little bit high grade when we talk about way more than 100 grams per ton. You also have gold fields with like 15% into your company, which is also a major company, $1 billion market cap, more than billions of dollars. You also have 1.5 million ounces in Chile. So tell us more. I mean, this seems to be a good opportunity to me. But when we met last time, like 2 years ago, we were looking at a chart and we were like, oh, there is some space to the upside, right? So let's talk about the upside and maybe downside potential for investors. And is there anything we haven't talked about that is really important for investors?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. There's very good infrastructure where the project is. So we recently announced access to water. There's a desalination plant 20 kilometres away. So we have a memorandum of understanding there with a local company called CAP. So we'll look to use their wastewater from their desalination plant for our processing water. And there's also there's grid power within 20 kilometres as well. And we'll hopefully later this year announce an agreement around accessing that grid power. There's plenty of capacity. We're in the coastal region of Chile, so we're actually 15 kilometres from the Pacific Ocean and 15 kilometres from the Pan American Highway. We're not at altitude, so on average, or the highest point on the property is about 900 metres. So we're not up in the Andes. So that combination of very good infrastructure. As you mentioned, we've now done 2 private placements with Goldfields. So Goldfields actually sit at 19%. So they're the largest shareholder on the register. And they, like us, see the regional potential. And I think that's where the real upside is. Typically with intrusive related gold systems, you tend to have multiple multi-million ounce deposits. We have the largest and most prospective gold property in Chile. So it's 570 square kilometres. And we've only explored about 5% of that. And as you mentioned, we've already defined 1.5 million ounces. We have an exploration target on that of 3 million ounces. What we'd like to show is not only growing Tenera to that 3 million ounces in the coming 2 to 3 years, but the potential to make another discovery within the district. And that really opens up the opportunity for a 5-6 million ounce project or 5-6 million ounce property.
All right, that sounds like you are in a good position, good spot. I mean, if we say let's say mining companies are lagging 12 to 18 months maybe, and you have some great news ahead within the next 2 years, that would be really good timing from first of all the market situation, but also obviously the new situation. Let's also talk about your phase 1 open pit scoping study, which is talking about 1,100 US ASICs or way less than that actually. Obviously, we have to add a little bit of inflation, right? Because probably it's not 100% up to date, but we are still talking about quite low cost today, right? It's all the inflation situation really has come down to that it's hard to find a company which is even below 1,000 US dollar ASIC, but you can still grow the resource, you can still lower the all-in sustaining costs. So tell us more about the scoping study, and is there any update planned?
Yeah, so the scoping study was undertaken for 2 reasons. One being obviously to show that we have an economic project that is fundable. And as you mentioned, the all-in sustaining cost is 1,068 US dollars per ounce. The capital is 130 million US dollars. It's a modest scale project. So really we look at it as a starter pit for the company. But as you mentioned, that there's a lot of potential to grow that existing resource. As I mentioned, there's 1.5 million ounces at the moment. We mine less than half of that. And as having an exploration target of 3 million ounces, we expect to actually develop a larger scale project. When you combine that with the fact that we have access to water and grid power, we're not at altitude, we're 15 kilometres from the national highway, all those things help to bring that low all-in sustaining cost. And we'd hope we'd be able to get that below 1,000 US dollars an ounce as we expand the project and add more ounces in and make it a larger scale project.
Great. And maybe for the end, we can talk about Chile as a jurisdiction. I mean, you said, which is always a plus point, that part of the management teams are really locals. That's probably a help, right? But how's the mining situation in Chile, especially in South America? Let's talk about, I mean, it's not South America, but Mexico, for example. It's been quite tough within the last few years for mining companies. So what's the situation like in Chile? Do you think permitting and all this kind of stuff, is there any issues ahead, or do you see it as a great jurisdiction and you're quite confident on all the permitting side?
I look for our specific project, El Zorro. We're very confident. Again, we've got good infrastructure. Plus, it's government land, and there are no inhabitants on the land, so that makes a big difference. And it's the driest place on earth, so you're not competing for water or arable land. Look, Chile has, like many in South America, a current left-leaning government, and there has been a lot of rhetoric about changing taxes and royalties. Interestingly, with gold, there is no royalty on gold in Chile. As part of the scoping study, we were granted, once you release the economics, we were granted an export license. That means we're able to claim back our VAT. So VAT's typically 18%. So we've put in a claim for around 4 million Australian dollars. We've already received 1.5 million of that back. So it's a very proactive jurisdiction, certainly Region 3 where we are for mining. And I think, if you look at it, to your point earlier, at a higher level, from a macro level, the bid by BHP for Anglo, that was all about copper, and 2 of those copper assets are actually in Chile. So you've got, it's the world's largest copper producing country. It's got the world's largest reserves of copper. You've got BHP, Rio, Anglo, all the major mining companies are active in the country, and really, Chile's wealth and success has come on the back of mining. So whilst occasionally there are changes and governments like to put forward ideas, none of those things that were spoken about early on in the current president's term have come to fruition. So it's actually still a great jurisdiction. It's a tier 1 mining jurisdiction, and certainly that northern part of Chile where we are is an excellent place to be operating and to build and permit a mine. Gold Fields, our largest shareholder, actually has just commissioned their mine, Salares Norte. We've seen Rio 2, who has another gold company. They've just permitted their mine. So permitting continues, and if you follow the process, it's relatively straightforward.
Great, Geoff, that sounds really good. Thank you very much for all your updates and all your insight. Maybe as a last question for the end, you've been talking from the company perspective, obviously, but maybe you can just switch seats for a second and talk to us from a, let's say, investor point of view. If you have a look, because you're an investor of yourself at Tesoro Gold, what would be your 3 main reasons to invest into the company today?
I think, one, there's significant upside in the resource, not only at Ternera, where we have 1.5 million ounces and that 3 million ounce target. So you can really see that developing into a large scale open pit with low all-in sustaining cost. Second is the regional area. It's relatively untested. As I mentioned, being the first intrusive related gold system to be discovered and defined in Chile, there's very good potential for other discoveries within our very large land package. It's similar to the Tintina province in Alaska and Canada, where you've got Brewery Creek, Donlin Creek, Fort Knox, all these very large, good quality projects. I think the other part is the infrastructure. It's quite unique to have water and power available to the company. And as we talked about from a macro perspective, I think the outlook for gold and gold equities has improved and will continue to improve. And I really think there'll be another leg up for the gold price when interest rates are cut, and that'll flow down into the gold juniors and developers.
Great. Geoff, thank you very much for giving us all these insights, all the informations. Obviously, we will link all the informations people need to do more due diligence about Tesoro Gold in the video description. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm really looking forward to your updates, and I will follow the company's news flow.
Thanks, Jan. Much appreciated.
Thank you. All right.